Imagine the final moments of our time's greatest monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, unfolding behind the veil of public scrutiny. Discover the secrets that came to light and how her august family coped with the inevitable end. This is a narrative of profound love for her country, an unwavering sense of duty, and the unyielding resolve that sustained Her Majesty's grandeur until her very last breath. In his book, Charles III, New King, New Court, The Inside Story, Robert Hardman meticulously chronicles the final hours of Queen Elizabeth II's life and the significant events that followed her passing. It's worth recalling that in July 2022, Boris Johnson decided to resign as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The Queen, keenly aware of the moment's gravity, understood the urgent need for a swift and clear transfer of power, which was her paramount concern. Elizabeth II even seriously considered personally overseeing the change of leadership in London, genuinely believing it would be far more logical than compelling two extremely busy politicians to travel to Scotland. She deemed this a more sensible solution than wasting precious time and energy of state officials on journeys accompanied everywhere by news helicopters. However, in August, Her Majesty changed her initial view, and royal physicians unanimously concluded that such a long trip would be overly strenuous for her. Although she was initially determined to return to London, the pressing question arose of her physical ability to remain in Scotland, explained a senior official close to the royal household. Her private secretary, Sir Edward Young, had a thorough discussion about the situation with members of the royal medical household and Cabinet Secretary Simon Case, who, in turn, also consulted with the incumbent Prime Minister. Ultimately, the final decision was made that both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss would travel in person to see the Queen at Balmoral. Elizabeth II, despite her health, insisted on standing to meet both politicians. This momentous event occurred just 2 days before her passing. The world then saw historic photographs capturing the Queen, bidding farewell to one Prime Minister, and formally appointing another. No one could have suspected at the time that these images would be her last public photographs. Boris Johnson spent 15 minutes with Her Majesty. Despite her obvious frailty, it was amazing how focused and bright she seemed, he later remarked. Minutes after Johnson's departure, it was Liz Truss's turn. She met me standing, Truss recalled. Although her health was clearly failing, we spoke for about 20 minutes. She was fully alert, completely lucid. I felt she had a great sense of relief that all the necessary business had been completed and we were moving forward. That very day, as shadows were already gathering, Her Majesty experienced genuine joy from another event of no less significance to her. Her beloved racehorse, Love Affairs, demonstrated incredible strength and grace, securing a resounding victory in a famous race at Goodwood Racecourse, achieving an impressive result of 35. Horse racing was not merely a hobby but a true passion for the Queen, a pursuit to which she dedicated a significant part of her attention and heart. During this period, as Liz Truss, then Prime Minister, remembered, the monarch's health was already causing serious concern among courtiers and close family, and everyone realized that the critical moment could arrive at any unexpected hour. Immediately after Truss officially assumed her high office, she was promptly briefed on the meticulously detailed Operation London Bridge plan, which outlined all procedures in the event of the monarch's passing. The staff who were with the Queen in those final days recalled that Elizabeth II was in remarkably high spirits that day, enthusiastically and vividly recounting numerous stories about all the prime ministers she had worked with throughout her long reign. Later that evening, she announced that she would go upstairs and dine alone, preferring solitude. This was the last time Her Majesty was seen alive. The next morning, September 8th, the Queen's condition deteriorated sharply and dramatically. She was unable to get out of bed. By chance, Princess Anne was at the residence at that moment, as was her son, Peter Phillips, the Queen's eldest grandson. When the Queen announced her intention to spend the entire day in bed, which was highly unusual and uncharacteristic behavior for her, a local doctor, Dr. Douglas Glass, was immediately summoned for an examination. Even after his visit, despite the deterioration, the Queen still planned to participate via video link in a Privy Council meeting scheduled for that evening. Recognizing the importance of the upcoming event, especially in the context of the recent change of government, the Queen fully understood that this serious engagement was to include the introduction of new cabinet members and key advisors. Palace officials, anticipating potential difficulties, even provided for the technical option of an audio-only connection if the Queen preferred to remain in her bedroom for the meeting. A direct line had already been established between London and Balmoral, and all Privy Councillors had lined up in strict order outside the Cobra conference room beneath Downing Street. But just minutes before the official start of the meeting, they were informed that Her Majesty would be unable to attend on the urgent recommendation of her doctor. During this tense time, Princess Anne maintained close contact with her elder brother, who was then in another part of Scotland, participating in charitable engagements at the picturesque Dumfries House in Ayrshire. He was constantly in touch, receiving the latest and most current information about their mother's health. I think he knew much more about our mother's health than any of us, Princess Anne recalled, reflecting on those anxious hours. In those fateful hours at Balmoral, there were no immediate signs of worsening conditions, yet a monumental dilemma confronted the Prince of Wales, the future King Charles. Should he continue with his planned engagements or immediately rush to his mother's side? The morning of September 8, 2022, presented a truly difficult choice. Hastily interrupting his schedule could trigger a wave of panic within both government circles and the media, and disrupt the fragile calm that prevailed at Balmoral. The prince was well aware that such declines in the Queen's health had occurred before. A vivid example was late 2021, when a sudden deterioration in her condition led many to believe the inevitable end was near. But to everyone's surprise, the Queen managed to recover. Nevertheless, by the evening of September 7th, both Princess Anne and the Prince's private secretary, Sir Clive Alderton, strongly advised Prince Charles to be on standby. The next morning, Princess Anne contacted him again, this time with even greater insistence, urging the prince to come immediately. Around 9:30 a.m., Charles and Camilla boarded a helicopter, accompanied by a small but essential team: Alderton, the Duchess's deputy private secretary, and a protection officer. During the hour-long flight, the prince meticulously reread the Operation London Bridge plan. Meanwhile, private secretaries diligently checked for the necessary morning attire. At breakfast, the Crown Equerry contacted Prince William's private secretary to inform him that the Queen had had an extremely difficult night and that the prince should head to Balmoral immediately. Soon after, the prince himself called his siblings and two sons, urging them to come immediately. At approximately 10:30 a.m., Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall, formerly known as the Duke and Duchess of Rothesay by Scottish tradition, arrived by helicopter at Birkhall, their residence located on the Balmoral estate. Prince Charles personally drove a staff member's Land Rover, and they headed to Balmoral. At the entrance, they were met by Princess Anne, who then escorted them directly to the Queen's bedroom. They spent about an hour there by Her Majesty's side, and at that moment, it became perfectly clear that the situation had turned critical. At 12:32 p.m., Buckingham Palace issued a press bulletin, which was sent to all major media agencies in the United Kingdom. The message stated that the Queen's doctors were concerned about Her Majesty's health and had recommended she remain under medical supervision. It concluded, "The Queen is comfortable at Balmoral." The entire royal family began to converge upon the dying Queen. The narrative also touches upon the arrivals of Harry, Meghan, and Catherine. The Prince of Wales, not yet king, and the Duchess of Cornwall left the Queen so she could rest briefly under the constant care of Princess Anne and Angela Kelly. The Reverend Kenneth Mackenzie, long-serving minister of Crathie, Kirk and royal chaplain, read passages from the Bible to her, comforting her spirit. All present were convinced there was still plenty of time. The doctor was not continuously at her bedside. He was attending to his usual duties in a small reception room at the castle, where he met with estate workers and their families, providing them with necessary medical care. Moments before the world learned of the official announcement of Elizabeth II's passing, a double rainbow miraculously appeared in the sky over London, as if heralding great change. Around 3:00 p.m., Dr. Glass received an urgent call with an insistent request to go to the Queen immediately. At that very hour, Princess Anne contacted Birkhall to urgently summon Prince Charles. The prince was on the Birkhall grounds, deep in thought and gathering mushrooms, when he received the alarming call. Time was measured in minutes, and he, along with Camilla, without delay, got into a car and rushed to his mother. By the time Dr. Glass finally reached the Queen's bedroom, her breathing seemed to have stopped. Sir Edward Young patiently waited outside. Finally, the doctor confirmed the gravest fears, delivering the tragic news. He agreed on the precise time of death with Sir Edward, who meticulously recorded the sequence of all events for historical record. These invaluable records are now kept in the Royal Archives. Recounting, peacefully in her sleep, old age slipped away, death to be registered in Scotland. Time agreed, 3:10 p.m. The doctor added, she didn't realize anything, no pain. An urgent phone call for Charles, who was still driving, caught him completely off guard. He was asked to stop immediately. The prince turned off the B976 onto a back estate road, and it was at this fateful moment that he heard the address, Your Majesty, for the first time in his life. No further explanation was needed. The meaning was perfectly clear. We're almost there, the new king replied softly but firmly. As the new queen and the other passengers offered their profound condolences, Charles put the land rover in gear and continued his journey to the castle. Minutes later, he arrived at the castle, where Princess Anne met him as king, paying homage to the new monarch. Sir Edward Young rushed across the castle to personally greet the new king and queen. There is still a centuries-old constitutional ritual that requires such a greeting. As the Queen's most senior official, Sir Edward had meticulously and scrupulously prepared for this duty. Colleagues recall that for many months he avoided foreign trips, and even subway rides, fearing losing connection and being out of reach at the most important moment of his career. Edward was deeply touched that Charles's first reaction was to put a hand on his shoulder. Charles offered words of comfort. I know how much you will miss her and how faithfully you served her. Afterward, Sir Edward Young, who had served as the late Queen's private secretary, addressed the new monarch with the first of the inevitable questions that confront every ruler. Under which name he intended to reign. He then moved on to the next equally important task, which was to obtain permission to inform the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. On that same fateful day, as it became evident that the situation at Balmoral was rapidly and unswervingly changing, Liz Truss, then Prime Minister, was speaking in the House of Commons, making an important statement about the impending and significant rise in fuel prices. She recalled, when I was in Parliament delivering the energy statement, Nadim Zahawi, who had recently been appointed Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, came into the chamber and handed me a note that said things were very bad. Soon after, she joined a conference call with G7 leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden. However, she was soon handed a second note, which prompted her to decide to leave the event. Everyone present perfectly understood what was happening, she stated. Accompanied by his wife, Queen Camilla, Charles went to his mother's bedside to say goodbye, and perhaps find the inner strength to carry out the immense tasks that already lay before him. Soon he would have to answer numerous questions from officials. The primary task became notifying the remaining members of the royal family who had not yet arrived. The procedure was strictly followed, starting with the new heir to the throne. One palace staff member recalled a truly surreal moment when the king picked up the phone to contact his eldest son. He began the conversation with his son by saying, "Hello, it's..." For a moment, his voice faltered. At that very moment, he did not wish to inform the switchboard that he was now king. He wanted his eldest son to hear the news first, so he continued, "It's me." Thus, the king was able to personally deliver the somber news to the Prince of Wales, the Duke of York, and the Earl of Wessex, who were then traveling from Aberdeen Airport to the castle. The late Queen's beloved niece, Lady Sarah Chatto, arrived in tears. The Duke of Sussex was still in the air and unfortunately could not be reached. Meanwhile, in London, royal staff swiftly responded to the news. Soon after the Queen's passing, the new head of the family ordered an immediate halt to all renovation work at Buckingham Palace. Project managers were sent home, and their office was quickly converted into a room designated for planning the upcoming funeral arrangements. Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby was spending the last days of his vacation in northern France, enjoying peace and quiet with his wife. When the first alarming message arrived from the palace, he immediately realized that returning to Britain was a matter of utmost urgency. I paced around the house, gripped by a premonition. We understood that Queen Elizabeth II was at the very end of her life. My head was spinning with the realization of what was happening, the Archbishop recalled. At that moment, the phone rang. On the line was his chief of staff, who uttered only two words, London Bridge. The King and Queen consort emerged to the crowd gathered outside Buckingham Palace on September 9, 2022, to address the nation. Inside the castle, an atmosphere of profound mourning prevailed. As Sir Edward Young and Sir Clive Alderton began meticulously planning the days ahead, a footman appeared in the chambers, carrying a red box. Sir Edward Young, opening it, could not have anticipated what he would find. Inside was a sealed letter. From Elizabeth II, addressed to her heir, along with the monarch's personal instructions. The red box contained something else. It was an extensive list of candidates for the Order of Merit, each accompanied by detailed notes. The Queen was to approve her list. The Order of Merit is a personal gift from the monarch, and its membership traditionally numbers 24 individuals. Elizabeth II always took this duty with exceptional seriousness. Just 2 days before her passing, these documents were given to her for final approval, and she fulfilled her duty. This proved to be the last document Queen Elizabeth II ever held. Even on her deathbed, she still had matters of state, and she completed them. Queen Elizabeth II and Kate Middleton, now the Princess of Wales, might at first glance appear to be vastly different figures in the history of the British monarchy. However, a closer examination of their life paths reveals a number of striking similarities that form a unique, deep connection between them. Throughout her reign, Queen Elizabeth II demonstrated unwavering devotion to her state duty. Her famous motto, "Never complain, never explain," fully reflected her approach to public service. Elizabeth II led the country for decades, steadfastly adhering to principles of stability and tradition. Similarly, Kate Middleton, since her entry into the royal family, has shown a deep commitment to her duties and responsibilities. She actively participates in numerous charitable initiatives, worthily represents the royal family at official events, and consistently demonstrates impeccable professionalism and discretion. Furthermore, Queen Elizabeth II always stood out for her unique sense of style, favoring vibrant hues and paying exceptional attention to minute details. Her image became the embodiment of elegance and royal grandeur. Kate Middleton is also known for her impeccable fashion sense. Her style, characterized by its restraint and elegance, serves as a source of inspiration for many people worldwide. She often chooses contemporary designer clothing while consistently adhering to centuries-old royal traditions.